to okay, let me see if I can turn my video on now. No, I can't turn my camera on now. So thank you again. Thank you for joining us. I want to start by introducing the project team. We are preparing this area plan with the team that you'll meet in just a few minutes, and with the help of our consultants, ESA and IDI, and sub-consultants, JKA, and BAE, and so forth. My name's Nee Kim. I'm with the Community Studies East section and managing the East Sangibra Valley Area Plan. With that, I'll hand it to over to Adrine and then to James. Hello?
Hey, Adrine, it looks like you're on mute.
Oh. Okay. James, why don't you go ahead and we can Adrine can jump in when
yeah, sure. Hey everyone, my name is James. Sorry you can't see my face, I'm sharing my screen right now, so there's a lot going on my workstation, but it's great to see some familiar names in the audience. I'm sure, and to all those who are new to this project, welcome. We have a lot of information to cover, and we're here for questions, and we welcome your feedback.
Okay.
It looks like Adrine's having computer issues, it looks like.
And so before we move on, well, just a few, meeting logistics and Zoom features. So the meeting is being recorded, and it will be
recording in progress.
And it'll be posted on our website for future viewing. In addition to that, as far as language support, we are providing Spanish and Chinese interpretations today, and Chinese both in Mandarin and Cantonese. And if you do need language support, if you look to the bottom of your screen, there's a globe icon and it says interpretation, and you can click on that and choose the language of your choice. And you should be able to get interpretation services that way. Also, during the presentation, if you'd like to raise your hand to talk, there's a button, there's an icon where you can raise your hand, and we'll be able to unmute you to ask your question. If you also have a question that you'd like to submit, you can also click on the Q&A icon, and you can type in your question, and we can get back to you. Okay, with that, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us and spending your evening with us. We're here today to give you an overview of the East Sangibra Valley Area Plan, the plan components, including the background information, land use strategies, map changes, the area plans, goals and recommendations. Next slide, please.
Hi, me. So just real quick, I got a notification from Adrine that we're going to change the slides out really quick. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and apologies to everyone. We'll be back, or stay on the webinar. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'll reshare with the right slides. Thanks.
Our apologies. We actually had a meeting this past Saturday, and so this is our second time presenting. In the meeting we had this past Saturday, we actually went off without a hitch, without any technical issues, but we have a couple glitches today. So thank you for your understanding and patience. And with that, I'll start the presentation. And the East San Gabriel Valley Area Plan is a long-term 20-year plan for the 24 unincorporated communities in the East San Gabriel Valley. And it's being developed to manage and guide the growth and change, that'll inevitably happen over time in the region. As a policy document, the area plan articulates the vision and goals for how that change should be directed, which is why your feedback has been valuable and continues to be valuable as we draft the plan. As you know, the county is facing some real challenges to short-term and long-term livability. Housing is becoming increasingly unaffordable. We're facing environmental concerns with climate change, increased wildfires, droughts, heat waves, and the East San Gabriel Valley is vulnerable to these issues. So one of the questions we are grappling with is, how can we provide high quality of life for all, both present and for future generations? Next slide. So the East San Gabriel Valley is one of 11 planning areas. I'm sorry, if you can back up to the last slide, James. Yeah. The East San Gabriel Valley is one of 11 planning areas. As you can see in the map to your left, the East San Gabriel Valley planning area is located in the easternmost portion of Los Angeles County, and it's shown in pink. The map on the right shows a close-up of the project area, and the areas that you see in yellow and orange are the unincorporated communities that we're planning for. Unincorporated means areas that are not in the cities, but in the county. And there are these 24 unincorporated communities. Next slide. Just, quick facts about the project area. There are about 250,000 people who live in 52 square miles of unincorporated East San Gabriel Valley. And in terms of land use, it's about 66% residential, and that 66% is mostly single-family residential. Some of the concerns that we consider for the area as a whole, as we draft this area plan, is where can some areas of housing opportunities be located, and how can they best fit into the existing communities? Are there a variety of housing options to help seniors and young families stay in the community? Are there areas prone to hazards? How do we best conserve natural resources? And, access, how are people getting around, driving, walking, biking? Can you take public transit to go places? Are there places to go shop and work in your community, or do you have to travel far? We know that improving transportation, housing, and jobs are important for long-term livability. Next slide. In terms of how the area plan it relates to the countywide general plan, the East San Gabriel Valley Area Plan is an extension of the Los Angeles County General Plan. The general plan establishes countywide goals and vision and provides guidance on the county's future growth and development. And that includes issues such as diverse housing options for residents, conserving natural areas and resources, balancing jobs and housing by co-locating jobs near housing and vice versa. And creating safer streets for walking and biking, creating more sustainable county to ensure a high quality of life for us and for future generations. And the area plan considers these issues at a more local level than the countywide general plan. Next slide. In terms of the components of the area plan is made up of 9 elements. Each include vision, goals, policies, and actions. We've created summaries of each of these plan elements, and it's available in English, Spanish, and Chinese on our project website. You can also read the full draft of the elements on the website. And the elements are land use, which addresses housing, commercial, industrial uses, and zoning. Community character and design, which looks at communities' unique characteristics and how to enhance design. Community development, which looks at jobs, commercial centers and opportunities. Mobility, which looks at how residents get around. Do they get around by driving, walking, transit, biking? Natural resources, conservation and open space element, which looks at natural areas, preservation and conservation of hillside and biological resources. The environmental justice element, which looks at communities, which may be more burdened by pollution and other negative impacts. The health and safety element looks at well-being in communities, directing development away from hazards and how to adapt to climate change. Public services and facilities looks at county services, libraries, and other public amenities. The Parks and Recreation element, which has been prepared with the help of Department of Public Parks and Recreation, surveys current facilities and outlines future needs and improvements. Next slide. The area plan also has area-wide recommendations in the elements, as we had just discussed, but it also includes community-level recommendations that build on those area-wide goals and policies. Communities with similar needs and opportunities and in similar geographic areas have been grouped together. Communities like Hacienda Heights and Roland Heights, which have their own community plans, are maintained in individual community chapters. These community chapters are also available on our project website for your review and feedback. So just to name, just to list off some of the communities. Communities in East San Gabriel Valley include Avocado Heights. In the Central Valley communities, they include North Pomona, South San Jose Hills, Belinda, and West Puente Valley. Hacienda Heights. The North Valley communities, Charter Oak, East Irwindale, East San Dimas, and Cabine Islands, Roland Heights, San Gabriel Mountains Foothills communities, and East Azusa, Glendora Islands, North Claremont, East Laverne, Northeast San Dimas, and West Claremont, South San Jose Hills, communities which include Walnut Islands and West San Dimas, South Diamond Bar, South Walnut, West Puente Valley communities, which are North Whittier, Pellisier Village, South El Monte. So those are all your 24 unincorporated communities in East San Gabriel Valley. Next slide, please. In addition to your area-wide elements and community-specific chapters, we also have area-wide and community standards. And in terms of area-wide standards, we're developing area-wide standards to address concerns that have been raised at various engagement events over the past years. And standards would include new development, requirement for new developments to include outdoor communal spaces such as courtyards, also standards to limit height. And as part of the plan, we are identifying significant ridgelines that should be protected. We're also updating the Roland Heights CSD for requirements related to commercial area design improvements, such as inclusion of public spaces again, and protection of significant ridgelines. The update also includes design improvements along Colima Road and at major intersections for a pedestrian-oriented central business district. Also in Avocado Heights, we are combining Avocado Heights Equestrian District with the Trailside Equestrian District. This will make sure that the same requirements apply to both equestrian districts. It'll also help clarify existing standards. Next slide, please. So our efforts to date on developing the East San Gabriel Valley Area Plan. To develop the area plan, we conducted community-level research and data analysis, developed existing conditions analysis and background reports, and community profiles. the work that we've done so far, the research, analysis, and reports, as well as community feedback, have informed the goals, policies, and recommendations in the plan elements and community chapters. Again, all of these documents are available on the project website for your further review and feedback. Next slide, please. I want to also briefly touch on our community engagement efforts. Over the past few years, so we've been attending needs and desires. We also have a project website with a blog feature where we make regular posts on community engagement efforts as well as the plan's progress. You can find all of this information and our contact information, including and a list of our past events, including meeting summaries. For example, the in-person vision workshop we held at the end of 2019 on our project website. We've also made an effort to provide some of this information in Spanish and Chinese. So there are summaries available in these two languages. Next slide. So these are a couple pictures of our community engagement events. One is of the visioning workshops we held. The other is the field trip we hosted with high school students from Rowland Heights. I want to also mention the community engagement project we had working with a storytelling artist called Fonografia to collect stories from residents about growing up in East Sangre Valley. And you can read their stories or you can listen to their stories by going to our project website. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adrine to talk about the area plan's vision and land use strategies. Please, at this point, let me know if you have any questions about any of the information I've presented so far. So in chat, I think we do have a couple questions. Okay, it says please send a link to Spanish interpreter. Okay, we'll see. For Spanish interpretation, if you click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen, and then you can choose Spanish. Thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Adrine.
Hi, everyone. You can advance to the next slide, please, James. Thanks. So we've been working with consultants to bring together the different elements of the area plan. And from our interactions with residents and other agencies, we've developed an overall vision to guide the goals and recommendations in the plan. So the vision for the plan is to create vibrant, thriving, safe, healthy, and pleasant communities, and to help this region retain its residential character, but also grow into an active regional hub with diverse options for housing, shopping, entertainment, recreation, and services. Next slide, please. So there are several land use goals that have guided our preliminary policy recommendations and land use decisions, and they include the following. For the first one, for diverse mixed income housing options, so where it's appropriate and in context with the surrounding neighborhood, diverse mixed income housing options should be provided. For the second one, each community should have walkable neighborhoods with safe, convenient access to transit, jobs, shopping, entertainment, recreation, and services. For the third one, we should strive to foster thriving commercial and employment centers throughout the planning area. And for the fourth one, communities need diverse options for getting around and maintaining health and well-being. We strive to create connected communities linked together by a network of complete streets and off-street pathways. And the final one, to preserve It's a priority of the plan to preserve, enhance, and restore open spaces and conservation areas, as well as scenic areas in the region. Next slide, please. For the fifth strategy is neighborhood complete streets. This supports the creation of neighborhood multi-use pathways for walking and biking to connect neighborhoods to public facilities, parks, and other neighborhood centers of activity and to transit options. Next slide, please. For strategy 6, to preserve, enhance, and restore. The planning area has many sensitive and scenic resources with rare plants and animals, including ridgelines, hillside areas, waterways, and rural and equestrian areas. And the plan seeks to preserve and enhance and restore these features and resources. For the next slide, please. So for the land use and zone change criteria and categories, there's a few different categories of proposed changes in the draft. And these are to help implement the plan recommendations and to address changing needs. The first category are areas the draft plan recommends that are appropriate for additional housing opportunities and diversifying land uses. And these are areas within a half mile of major transit stops and a quarter mile of designated high quality transit areas, as well as adjacent to major commercial intersections and roads. The second category are land uses and zone changes that are recommended by the housing element update, which was recently adopted by the board. The area plan will be implementing those adopted recommended changes. And the state actually requires that each jurisdiction make necessary land use and zone changes to accommodate housing needs. Next slide, please. So for the third category, these are mostly, they consist of like what we call administrative changes to land use or zoning. And these are primarily to address either inconsistencies or resolve any conflicts between the land use and zoning designation and the existing uses on the land. The changes will correct these administrative sort of inconsistencies and make sure that the land use and zoning are consistent with the surrounding area and the existing use on the properties. In some cases, properties have split zoning, and those will also be corrected to make sure the zoning and land use are consistent on the single property as well. And for the final sort of category of changes, and this is probably impacts the most properties in as far as the zone changes go. And this is to change the legacy agricultural zones to better reflect residential uses in the area. So where residential subdivisions are made up of around 6,000 square foot or smaller lots, they're recommended to be zoned to the residential 1 category for single family uses. And where properties are larger than 6,000 square feet, they're recommended to be rezoned to the residential agricultural designation, which allows for residential and some lighter agricultural uses. And then for both of those zones, all the development standards for heights, setbacks, and lot coverage are the same. The primary issue is basically to make sure that the uses uses that are allowed in the A zones and the agricultural zones, they may be inconsistent with residential neighborhoods. And in addition, the county is developing a cannabis ordinance to potentially permit cannabis cultivation dispensaries and other such uses in the agricultural zones. So the zone changes are intended to ensure that uses that are inconsistent with residential areas are not permitted. However, for areas that are rural or agricultural or have equestrian uses in their nature, they can actually maintain the agricultural zoning, which reflects the use that's on those properties. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to actually go through some of the recommended changes in the communities. So we'll go kind of by community. And I just wanted to mention that all the maps that we're going to show here are found on our website. So you can open them, zoom in, see more detail, and of course send us questions as you have them. So for the Avocado Heights community, for recommending that housing opportunities be focused near Workman Mill Road and sort of the major in the commercial center there. And so the recommendations include enhancing that major commercial center at Workman Mill Road and Don Julian. For the next slide. And so this map shows the recommended zone changes in the draft. So for the agricultural zones that are outside of the equestrian district, those are proposed to be changed to single-family zones of either residential 1 or residential agricultural, depending on the size of the property. And so for housing opportunities, that will be moderately expanded near the intersection of Workman Mill Road and Don Julian, from the current agricultural zone to a residential 2 zone, which is a duplex zone. And the commercial zoning there is proposed to be changed to mixed use zoning to support more diverse, walkable neighborhood commercial centers. Next slide, please. So this is for the community of Charter Oak. And for Charter Oak, housing opportunities and diversification of land uses will be focused along Arrow Highway, Cienega Avenue, Grand Avenue, and Valley Center, where there's access to transit and amenities. There are recommendations to enhance the walkability and connectedness of existing commercial areas to the nearby neighborhoods and to strengthen and enhance existing commercial centers along major roads. Next slide, please. So for Charter Oak, for the agricultural zones, those are proposed to be changed to single-family zones of both residential 1 and residential agricultural. And the commercial and agricultural zoning along Arrow Highway and its major intersections are proposed to be changed to mixed use to support walkability and a diversity of communities serving commercial uses. Residential areas adjacent to major commercial roads are also proposed to be changed to allow for more diverse housing options from the agricultural zone to residential 2, which is again the duplex zone. I think for the remainder of the presentation, James is actually going to come in to explain the rest of the communities, the proposed changes, and kind of take us through the end of the presentation.
So, Adrine. So we'll move on to the community of Covina Islands, and I'll just like to reiterate again that all of these maps, I know it's tricky to see in a webinar format, it's all available on our project website. We have a map app that's in preparation now, so there'll be other interactive ways to look at the proposed changes. And these are draft maps as well, and are subject to change per additional community feedback. So if you can't notice everything on these maps today, I think the key takeaway is the zone change strategies and what the goals we're trying to achieve. And for specific questions at specific parts of the map, it's we can always follow up one-on-one, and you can take a look at our maps on our project website. So for Covina Islands, housing opportunities and diversification of land uses will be focused along Arrow Highway, Azusa Avenue, Cypress Street, Citrus Avenue, and near Baronka Avenue, where there is access to transit and amenities. There are recommendations to enhance the walkability and connectedness of existing commercial areas to the nearby neighborhoods, to strengthen and enhance existing commercial centers along major roads, to connect pathways to local waterways, and to explore opportunities for employment along the Arrow Highway near transit stops. The agricultural zones are proposed to be changed to a single-family zone, residential 1. The agricultural zoning along Baronka is proposed to change to commercial to support walkability and a diversity of community-serving uses. Residential areas adjacent to major commercial roads are proposed to be changed to allow for more diverse housing options, from an agricultural zone to residential 2, which is a duplex zone, including areas along North Donna Beth Avenue. The RA zoned areas near Cypress Street and Citrus Avenue is proposed to change to residential 3. It's a triplex zone because of its proximity to transit. All right, moving on to the community of East Irwindale. For East Irwindale, housing opportunities and a diversification of land uses will be focused near Arrow Highway and Mark Cullen Avenue, where there is access to transit and amenities. There are recommendations to enhance the walkability and connectedness of existing commercial areas to the nearby neighborhoods, to strengthen and enhance existing commercial centers along those major roads, and to connect pathways to those local water channels. The agricultural zones, A1, are proposed to be changed to a single-family zone, residential 1. The agricultural zoning along Arrow Highway is proposed to be changed to commercial and residential 3, with more diverse housing options to support walkability and a diversity of community-serving uses. Residential areas adjacent to major roads, including near Gladstone and Lark Ellen, are proposed to be changed to R2, which is our duplex zone, to allow for more diverse housing options. From A1 zone to residential zones, at San Bernardino, it's proposed to change from C1, which is the most restrictive commercial zone, to a more diverse commercial zone, which is C2. All right, moving on to the community of East San Dimas. There are recommendations to strengthen and enhance existing commercial centers and support more community-serving retail. There's also recommendations here to improve the walkability and connectedness of existing commercial areas to the nearby neighborhoods and to connect local pathways. The RA zoning north of Baseline Road and between Gladstone and Juanita is proposed to be changed to residential 1. At the intersection of Sedalia and Juanita and along San Dimas Canyon, it's proposed to change from RA to C1, which is the least intensive commercial zone, which also allows for housing. Moving on to the community of Hacienda Heights. For Hacienda Heights, housing opportunities and diversification of land uses will be focused around the major intersection of Hacienda and Halliburton, as well as near Azusa Avenue, where access to transit and amenities is very high. There are recommendations to strengthen and enhance existing commercial centers, enhance Hacienda as a pedestrian-oriented commercial core, and support more community-serving retail. There's also recommendations to improve the walkability and connectedness of those existing commercial areas to the nearby neighborhoods and to connect those pathways to local services as well. It's recommended to strengthen employment opportunities north of the 60 freeway. Changes are recommended for residential areas near Hacienda and Halliburton to be rezoned from R1 and RA to R2, the duplex zone, and from R3 to R5, which is a more diverse multifamily zone. There are also recommended changes from commercial to mixed-use zone at Azusa, and for the residential area adjacent to be rezoned from RA to R2, which is consistent with the nearby multifamily zoning, and with the recommendations in the adopted Hacienda Heights Community Plan. It also supports walkability and vibrancy near major commercial cores of the community. This will maintain consistent land use categories across all communities in the plan area. In addition, the adopted housing element update has designated changes to commercial zoning in the northern and central parts of Hacienda Heights along Hacienda Boulevard and 7th Avenue to C1 and CH, which are the more limited commercial zones, and C3, which is the most permissive commercial zone. This will facilitate revitalization of the commercial centers, as the CPD zone, which is Commercial Plan Development Zone, is very limited and has additional permitting requirements that have posed barriers to revitalization of commercial centers. Moving on to the community of Rowland Heights. For Rowland Heights, housing opportunities and a diversification of land uses will be focused around the major intersections in Colima Road, where there's access to transit and amenities. There are recommendations to strengthen and enhance existing commercial centers along Colima as a pedestrian-oriented commercial core and support more community-serving retail. There's also recommendations to improve the walkability and connectedness of existing commercial areas to the nearby neighborhoods and to connect those pathways to local services. It's also recommended, similar to Hacienda Heights, to strengthen those employment opportunities north of the 60 freeway. Changes are recommended for residential areas near Colima and major intersections to be rezoned from R1 and A1 to R2, the duplex zone. There are also recommended changes from commercial zoning to mixed-use zoning along Colima Road to support walkability and vibrancy near the major commercial cores of the community. In addition, for consistency with the general plan land use categories, all those land uses as determined by the Rowland Heights Community Plan will be transitioned to the general plan equivalent. This will maintain consistent land use categories across all communities in the plan area. For A-zoned properties and residential areas, they are proposed to change to R1 for properties that are less than 6,000 feet, and RA for properties that are greater than 6,000 feet. Properties in agricultural and equestrian areas can maintain their A1 zone as consistent with their existing land uses. Moving on to the community of South San Jose Hills. For South San Jose Hills, housing opportunities and diversification of land uses will be focused within a half-mile of commercial centers on Valley and Nogales, where there's access to transit and amenities. Additional housing opportunities will be focused near Temple and Azusa. There are recommendations to strengthen and enhance existing commercial centers as a pedestrian-oriented commercial area and support more community-served retail. There are also recommendations to improve the walkability and connectedness of existing commercial areas to those nearby neighborhoods. It's recommended to strengthen employment opportunities along Valley Boulevard. The agricultural zones are proposed to be changed to single-family zone, residential 1 and residential agricultural, depending on the lot size. The agricultural zone at Temple and Azusa is proposed to be changed to commercial. The commercial zoning at La Puente and Nogales is proposed to be changed to a mixed-use zone to support diverse commercial uses and a walkability on a commercial corridor. And moving on to the community of Belinda. For Belinda, housing opportunities and diversification of land uses will be focused near Azusa and Amon, where there's access to transit and amenities. There's recommendations to strengthen and enhance existing commercial centers as more pedestrian-oriented, and to support more of that community-serving retail. There's also recommendations to improve the walkability of those nearby neighborhoods and connect those pathways to local waterways. The commercial zoning along Azusa, Glendora, and Amar is supposed to be changed to mixed use to support diverse retail and walkability. The A1 zones are proposed to be changed to R1 and RA, single-family zoning, to maintain the consistency of residential uses. I'd like to point out that there may be a correction on this map related to zoning. There's currently R1 zoning along Amar that may be changed to mixed-use zoning or a multifamily zone, and we're still working out which one that would be. But either way, it would be a change from R1, residential 1, to more multifamily use, and that's along the Amar Road and intersection of Amar and Walnut Avenue. For West Point Valley, diverse housing opportunities and land uses will be focused near Francisquito and Orange Avenues, where there's access to transit and amenities. There's also recommendations to improve walkability and connectedness of existing commercial areas to the nearby neighborhoods and to connect those pathways to local services. The A1 zones are proposed to be changed to R1, single-family zoning, to maintain the consistency of residential uses. The commercial zoning at the corner of Orange Avenue and Francisquito is supposed to be changed to mixed use to support diverse land use and housing options. All right, that was a very quick overview of all of the community's proposed land use maps. Before I dive into more information about another project related to transportation in the East San Gabriel Valley, that would be the East San Gabriel Valley Mobility Action Plan, we can pause here and see if there's any hard to see. And if there's any specific changes, we can certainly approach those offline or in another one-on-one meeting. But for now, we can definitely take questions. Looks like Teri has her hand raised. So I'm going to go allow you to talk, Teri. Here you go. You'll have to unmute yourself, Teri, to speak.
On the Rolling Heights map, you can get back to it. It's a little confusing with the color coding. The areas to the extreme south, it looks like it's A1 light and A2 heavy rather than open space. Am I reading that correctly? Because I see different shades of greens there. And that's in our hills.
That's correct, Teri. Those are currently A1 and A2 zones. Yeah, Adrine, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, well, it's just, one of the focuses is our open space and our hills. That's part of the vision.
Sure, Teri, I can respond to that. So for the land in the hillside, that's it's presently zoned A1 and A2, and that's for properties that are land that is actually designated as open space, and then there's also privately owned land that's a zoned A1 and A2. So for the properties in that area that are designated as open space, they do have land use categories of open space, usually either open space conservation or open space in parks and recreation. Those are the general land use categories that all of that are, equate the Roland Heights categories of open space. So for the properties that are privately owned in the hillsides, again, because they are privately owned, those have the A1 and A2 zones, and generally they'll be converted to a land use category of rural lands. But the designated open space zone, that is just for publicly owned designated open space land.
Out of curiosity, what are the building requirements in rural lands?
So for all of that area, actually in the hillside, it's also SEA, which is the the significant ecological areas. So they go through a rigorous process of going through a separate review for ecological and biological resources on the land, and it goes through that review process and a hearing process through that aspect of it before it actually goes into more of the land use designation process too. So there is the review and the protection. It's in there's the significant ecological areas ordinance, and also that map that covers all of that area.
Okay, and a few other questions. Kind of in that same area where you see the actual open space, there's sort of a beigeish color. Is that proposed developments or existing residential? It's sort of a beige. I can't tell if that's Vantage Point or another proposed couple of developments.
The area that's sort of just south of the light green, yeah, that's Vantage Point.
Okay.
And so, Terry, the only changes that are made to the zoning are what you see on this map. Everything else is as it exists.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
I think up next we have Roy, who's the second person to raise their hand, and then after that, Debbie. All right, Roy, I'm going to allow you to talk, and you'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I've unmuted myself. A critical issue that has not been addressed, and it's going to cause a major upheaval, is the countywide campsites for transients and homeless throughout the, in this case, we're talking about the unincorporated areas. And just so to get you oriented on the right scenario there, the Sheriff Villanueva has this as one of his 10 points for his re-election campaign, and it's something that really needs to be considered closely. And maybe you're later on in this presentation we can address things like cannabis regulation in the residential areas, public toilets, and you're talking about transportation for people. In fact, and it's been in the news, you don't have to believe me, that transportation, and I'll use the term metro or the light rail lines, is simply unsafe. And there are lots of things going on that need to be addressed. But as far as that point of everybody's going to be going on these alternate transportation to get them out of their vehicles. And I applaud your efforts, I really do. This is a mission impossible. So thank you very much for the time, I appreciate it.
Thanks for your comments, Roy. All right, moving on to Debbie, who I'm going to allow you to talk, and you'll need to unmute.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't quite sure how to unmute, but I guess it shows up when you call on me. Following up on Teri's comments, there is a couple of items over near Brea Canyon Road or Brea Canyon Cutoff. There's a beige color that looks like it's being called out as a new planned development. It looks to be the location where we have a school currently, so I have a question about that, but it's hard to tell on the map. And then also Royal Vista looks like it is no longer open space. And I believe in our general plan specific plan for Rolling Heights, it is an open space, but I might be wrong on that. But I'd like to at least have both of those items addressed.
Sorry, can you repeat which section of Brea Canyon cutoff that you were talking about?
It's really close to that green star. It's a beigey color.
Gotcha. Okay, so that would be existing zoning. So it's likely probably RA, but that would be what existing zoning is, and that's not an area where we're proposing any changes.
Okay. Can you tell me though if that is the school location?
Oh gosh, I would have to look a little bit closer into that. Let me get back to you on that, Debbie, okay? I can send you an email once I look into it.
Okay, thank you.
And, sorry, yeah, the second, the second question?
Is the Valley Vista Golf Course is showing up as A1, A2? Is that the current designation for it?
That would be, yeah, that would be the current designation. I think what you're referring to is the land use. It has the land use designation that's different, but the zoning is A1. And that's not changed. That's what it currently.
Okay, so there's both the OS, there's open space on one side, and on the other side it's A1, A2.
The land use category would be the open space one. And this one is showing the zoning specifically. But yeah, so this is what currently is. And again, not through this process, there aren't any changes being proposed to that.
Okay. And then I just have a general question overall for all
Sure.
to majority of the unincorporated areas. There's seems to be a big push away from agriculture to residential, and that may reflect the fact that there's already residential there, but also due to food security and other kinds of security aspects that I believe the world will be looking towards in the near future to have local opportunities for agriculture and proximity to urban areas. Is there a plan within the county to maintain viable agricultural properties, or is the push to replace agriculture that is remaining, or at least properties that could serve as agriculture, to housing?
So for the viable agricultural lands, there is a preservation efforts for that, and but for areas like this one, Debbie, where a lot of it is legacy agricultural zoning, and it's primarily being applied to it's on residential subdivisions, and that's where we're making the changes. Anything that is currently agriculturally used, or like I said, equestrian uses, that stays sort of agricultural. It's really just trying to make sure that the use list that's allowed is tailored toward residential for those residential subdivisions.
Okay, so in the case of Roland Heights, where we have along Desiree,
yeah, that's not changing. No.
and then the other areas where we have
In native, that's not changing either. No, those are staying.
forest keeping already.
Yeah, where we kind of had some comments from the public and have looked into it, and wherever there's that, even if it's not an equestrian district, if there are those uses, then we've maintained the A zones there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, next up, I think I'm just going in order of hands raised. It's Bill. So Bill, I'm gonna allow you to talk, and you'll need to unmute to speak.
Okay, there we go. My questions are about the Colima Road in Nogales. As you know, yesterday I was looking at the maps and everything that you've drawn up, and they show like taking the streets down to one lane for a car going one direction and one lane on the other direction for a car. Then you have you have a lane for a bicycle, then you have a sidewalk, and in between the car and the sidewalk, in the cars and the bicycle, you got a place with trees and stuff like that on both sides of the street. So are you telling me, for what I've seen in the maps, is that you're gonna take Colima Road, Nogales, to one lane in each direction?
There's no, so as part of this project, there's no proposed capital projects to implement any sort of street alterations as part of this project. The there is the East San Gabriel Valley Mobility Action Plan that proposes strategies to improve mobility in the area through all the unincorporated areas. But that plan itself does not propose any capital projects on any streets specifically, and it doesn't program those funds.
Yeah, because that wouldn't help mobility anyway. You know that would mess up the freeways and every other thing. I mean, if there's just one lane of traffic on each direction, the fire department wouldn't be able to get out. The buses traveling down, if they had to stop and pick people up, you know, everybody would have to be waiting. You'd never be able to go down Colima.
No, I appreciate the comment. Yes, and it's certainly with that area, because Nogales is a feeder onto the SR60. There would likely be input from Caltrans on that as well. But rest assured that this project does not program any capital projects related to that.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah. No. All right, going down the list here again, I think it was Teri first and then back to Roy. So I'm going to unmute you, Teri, and then you'll have to unmute yourself.
This is David Malkin, her husband. Just have one question. On Colima, west of Fullerton Road, there's a McDonald's restaurant there. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And right next to that McDonald's restaurant, there's a hill there. For the old timers, we call it Chalk Hill. I can't make out whether or not that's being changed for zoning. At one time, a Charlie Brown restaurant was going to be built there. But when they started building those homes there, they found a lot of fossils. So I think for historic reasons or whatever, they didn't build it. And I'm just wondering if that's being maintained for preservation for historic reasons and the fossils, or if that's going to be changed for development.
Hi, David. It's Adrine. I can answer that. So Chalk Hill, there's no change to any zoning on Chalk Hill. No change to any designations. We're aware that there are historic resources there, and in the plan, there's a policy to preserve Chalk Hill. And I think when another phase of this project is going to be to do a historic resources survey. It's not included with this part of the plan, but it will be included in a later separate project. And when that happens, those kinds of resources will be further identified. And so, yeah, there aren't any changes proposed to Chalk Hill at all. We're definitely aware of its historic status.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, and now moving on to Roy. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay, that's good. Hope you can hear. Just a few clarifications, and I've mentioned this once before on another forum there. Chalk Hill is geologically unstable for development. I've gotten that from several sources. And as to Debbie's point about the agriculture and so forth, I think the golf course development, which is, can you hear me? I keep getting this unmute sign. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to try it again. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good to go, Roy. Sorry about that.
Okay. So I'll just start. Once Chalk Hill is geologically unstable for development without extraordinary measures on that, and several sources on that. On the money on the golf course development tells you what it's all about. And that's going to go through, it's called the money. And now us simple folks call Daisy Ray Desire over there. And in fact, they have a 3 to 4 new structures on that last property on the south end of Desire. So that agriculture has been developed there. And the whole thing is, it's money. And we could use examples throughout the entire area how money is the motivating factor. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and we have a question from Shan Lee. It says, what is the status of big areas south of Roland Heights? There were development proposals in the past, but we were denied. Has it been declared SCA? Since we're losing Royal Vista, due to residential development, is it possible to have a golf course there?
So for the area south, it is SEA. As far as the golf course, again, most of it is privately owned, so that would be probably up to the private property owners in that area. And as far as any sort of public improvements, that's definitely something that I think Parks and Rec would be the department that would, I think, look into that. We're kind of not in the position to designate an area for a golf course, like specifically as part of this planning process.
All right, with that, just one final call for any questions for this part. We can always take other questions for the other components that we'll share just a little later on. Still a few more slides to go through, but if there's any questions related to these maps, looks like Deb has her hand raised. Asked to unmute here. There you go, Debbie.
Okay. Yeah, I think just kind of following up on what Roy had mentioned and others about the loss of Royal Vista, since that's still an open item that the Planning Commission is still looking into, and you guys are undertaking this particular process where you're still maintaining it as a non-residential space. What is, I guess, the process or the direction that this can take where these two things are kind of going in tandem, parallel to each other, and at what point does one side flip or the other, or do they have to come back at some point and request a zoning change? So I guess I'm kind of questioning the process of these things going on concurrently. If that makes sense.
Sure. As far as the concurrent timing, it's sort of, it is, just some sort of occurrence. But as we maintain, we're looking at, the 20-year plan, and as far as this process is concerned, the zoning is whatever it is. Any private property owner at any point can apply to the department to, try to change a use, change a designation. That's within the process, and it has to go through its own process, and that gets reviewed through the subdivision section and through RPC. But what we always maintain is the acts of a private property owner are very separate from what we're looking at and what we're doing here. I don't know if that clarifies that, but they stay separate.
Okay, so it's not that this is declaring the will of the community to have it stay this way. It's still pretty much an open item.
We can't, it is not within this, this planning sort of project's authority to kind of do that. Again, as a private property, they can pursue that through the subdivision section and through the reviewing process. But it maintains its separation in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
This group can't decide on a private, like a development proposal. That's not kind of within our authority. That'll go through its review and certainly your community's comments through that review application and subdivision hearing process.
Okay, so we should maintain commenting on both sides.
Sure. Yeah.
The comment on this side and comment on that side.
Yeah,
Okay,
unfortunately,
thank
it's just random timing. But yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
All right, and with that, we'll move on to some of the final components of the Mobility Action Plan. So, like I mentioned earlier, the Mobility Action Plan is a grant-funded effort to improve access to transit and active transportation options in the planning area. It identifies barriers to transportation, recommends strategies for closing gaps, coordinates mobility strategies across 24 unincorporated islands and 13 cities in the Single Valley. The Mobility Action Plan has been conducting engagement in the communities over 3 different phases. From engagement, input, and feedback, as well as additional research, the planning effort developed an analysis of existing conditions, mobility needs, and recommendations. The draft plan consists of an existing conditions analysis, mobility vision and strategy, and the final plan that will be incorporated as the East San Gabriel Valley Area Plan's mobility element. So just to sum up, the Mobility Action Plan is a separate grant-funded project that will ultimately serve as the mobility element of the area plan. The engagement activities included coordination with Parks Department and Foothill Transit to publicize the project and gain feedback from community members. You can see in the park stencils the picture here on the screen that we have quotes from community members in the area and how they can access places in their community. We also had an online suite of materials that you can take a look at our website. We have this very interesting virtual foyer open house type of environment that's linked on our project website. And to see bus placards that we were able to collaborate with Foothill Transit on, and to see the actual installed stencils at LA County Parks in your neighborhood, you can go to our project website and we have a blog, and that we've shared some of those photos. You should also expect to see probably around this weekend some additional temporary signage going up around some local LA County parks in the area, further advertising this plan and to get feedback on the draft. And so the draft of the Mobility Action Plan is currently on our project website as well. So the Mobility Action Plan effort mapped mobility indicators, including the generators, attractors, and barriers to active transportation. This includes a variety of indicators that are related to socioeconomics, like population and employment density, key destinations such as schools, parks, and shopping centers, and barriers to active transportation, such as areas with high pedestrian and bicycle collisions or low pedestrian level of comfort. The planning effort also developed strategies to address mobility gaps. The gaps were informed by profiles of existing transit and mobility services, community demographic and socioeconomic characteristics, factors influencing the demand for transit and mobility, and public engagement and feedback. So those are just a few slides on the Mobility Action Plan, and just a sort of a final note for both the Area Plan and Mobility Action Plan. These plans and projects certainly don't operate in a vacuum. We have to research and comply with local, state, and federal laws, but also local county initiatives, such as the housing element update that was recently completed by the county, climate action plan, an update to the safety element of the general plan, the LA County Parks Needs Assessment, public health pedestrian plans, the county's sustainability plan, and other past transportation projects, including the East San Gabriel Valley Active Transportation Plan, not to mention other initiatives such as Vision Zero. And just to note too, for more information on the Mobility Action Plan, you can tune in on Thursday at the same time, 6 p.m. for another webinar that'll take a deeper dive into just the Mobility Action Plan, what it proposes, recommendations and strategies, and they can provide another opportunity or another forum to provide feedback. So, stay tuned, or if you're interested, please register for our Thursday evening meeting. That's this Thursday at 4/28. Taking a look at our project timeline, we're presenting the draft plan for your review and feedback. And so all the components of the plan are available on our website. The comments you provide will inform the final draft of the plan. Our next steps are to begin preparing the CEQA environmental review document for the plan. And we also plan to hold a public hearing on the revised draft plan and the environmental documents at the Regional Planning Commission in January 2023, with a hearing at the Board of Supervisors in spring 2023. So as you can see on this project timeline, we've been working on this project for several years, and so I'm sure we've definitely some familiar names in the audience, and we've worked with you for quite some time. And just note that this project will be going to the Regional Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors in early 2023. So that concludes the bulk of our presentation. I know it was a ton of information, and just to reiterate again, a bit of a broken record, but all of our project documents are available on our project website. That includes community maps. If there's any difficulty finding things in the maps, you can always go there. And if there's a question about a specific parcel, property, or address, you're more than welcome to email us on that. At this time, we can take any final questions that folks may have. And we also have an exit survey to take that regional planning is implementing, and that's to help make sure that what we present to you is effective. But before we get to that exit survey, we can just look to see if anyone has any final questions. And it looks like Roy has his hand up. I'm going to unmute you, Roy, and then you'll have to unmute yourself too. Okay, you should be good to go.
Oh, okay. I've got to leave now, and I just want to thank you all very much. I know this is a task of tasks, and as far as the repetition thing, like when I tell my kids to take out the trash, about the third time they get the message. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Roy. All right, looks like Teri has her hand up. I'm going to unmute you, Teri.
Yeah, it's on all the maps, but more specifically, if you want to get the rolling one, it's a little bit hard to figure out some of the colors on the legends. So, like the brown area and Fullerton Road, I can't tell, and it's throughout all of them, that kind of, it's like a kind of a pale olive green. I'm not sure what that matches up with on the legend. But it's in like all the different maps. I just can't quite match the color with that housing area.
Sure. So just to go through some of these colors, especially some, and there's so many different zoning categories, so them all. So just a quick kind of crash course. What you see in this sort of dark brown, where my let me see if I can actually annotate this, might be better.
It's the one like all around that. That one I can see is RA, which is, you said residential agriculture, which means
Right.
it's greater than 6,000 square feet.
Yeah, this here where I'm kind of drawing in red, I know there's already a lot of red on the map. That's R1, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And then this here, this more beige is a residential plan development. These are your more traditional, subdivisions, largely built at one time, and so they have that RPD zone applied to them at the point of development.
Okay. That doesn't look like the pale yellow, but thanks for clarifying, because it's in all the maps.
Sure, yeah, no worries, Teri. And it is difficult because I think there's just so many legacy agricultural zones, not just in Lowland Heights, but certainly in the other communities, and so it can make the pale yellow a little harder to see. But thanks for your comment. All right, and with that, I don't know if there's any other questions that people have. I think now's the final opportunity to ask any questions for this meeting. Again, we're certainly an open book, and if there's any questions on specific properties, we're more than happy to answer them. Just send us an email. All of our contact information is on our project website. I don't know if there's anything else to go over, me and Adrine.
No. Again, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. And as far as some of the questions you may have about Rowland Heights, we will have our monthly meeting coming up, and we can answer some more questions at that meeting. And here's the exit survey. Thank you.
So please, before you go, everyone, you can just fill out this survey. It's 2 questions. Was this meeting useful? Yes, no. Promise our feelings won't get hurt. Don't worry about that. And then, was the information presented too much, not enough, or just enough?